In May of 2015, former Konami game director Koji Igarashi, better known as just Iga, launched a Kickstarter campaign for his new game, Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. The game was announced to be a new Metroidvania from Iga, one of the godfathers of the genre. The launch video was full of references to his most famous work, Castlevania Symphony of the Night.
What is a man? A miserable little pile of secrets!
納得いかない。このビジョンを実現するには
And even the new game's title apes the classic as an obvious spiritual successor. Within a few hours of the Kickstarter's launch, the game had passed its $500,000 funding goal and surpassed $1.5 million in the first day, on the way to collecting $5.5 million total. But that's not the end. No, that's where this story begins. I'm Dean from Fandom, and yes, I kickstarted this game. After 4 years of development, it's finally ready for release. So let's look at what we know about Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, from what's already out to what even now is on the distant horizon. According to its billing, this is to be the biggest and most robust game from Iga yet. He promised more of everything over his previous projects, which isn't actually that surprising. After he basically defined the genre with Symphony of the Night for the PlayStation 1, his future Castlevania titles were all scaled down to handheld games like Aria of Sorrow and Order of Ecclesia. So Bloodstained is actually his first full-scale console and PC-based game in the genre since Symphony of the Night's release in 1997. So it makes sense then that this would be Iga's biggest game yet. He hasn't really had the opportunity to top his initial masterpiece. So what is Bloodstained itself actually going to be like? Well, the story follows a girl named Miriam, an orphan who was cared for by an alchemist guild in England during the Industrial Revolution. The alchemists, with their livelihoods threatened by machines and modernization, used increasingly dangerous and arcane experiments to justify their continued existence. The guild began creating shardbinders, human subjects with transplanted, crystallized demonic energy in their bodies, as part of a ritual to summon and use demons for a large-scale attack on England. Every shardbinder produced by the Alchemist Guild died in the process of the rites, except for two: a boy named Jeeble, who survived for unknown reasons, and Miriam, who was mysteriously placed into a coma before her rite was completed. The Alchemist Rebellion was eventually put down, and the demons returned to the underworld, but only after heavy losses. Miriam remained in her coma for exactly 10 years, before being awoken and joined by an alchemist named Johannes, the only alchemist who initially objected to the guild's mission. Miriam's awakening coincides with the reappearance of Jeeble, and the rise of a demonic castle over which he apparently presides. Despite Jeeble once being comrades with Miriam and Johannes, it appears he is behind the return of the demons. So Miriam must confront Jeeble in his castle to stop the demonic outbreak and end the Shardbinder's curse laid on them both. So, yeah, it's a bit more complex a premise than Kill Dracula, but hey, it's not Castlevania. On the gameplay side, you can obviously expect some of the classic exploration-based gameplay Iga is known for, and we're even getting a version of the system introduced in Aria of Sorrow, where defeating enemies gives you a chance to obtain their powers. This actually plays into the game's plot, as those powers take the form of demonic crystals, like the ones transplanted into Miriam. Johannes warns that absorbing too many of those powers could reverse his treatment that lets her keep that power in check. So as Miriam becomes more powerful, there's a nagging fear that her power may be destroying her. But in addition to gaining new demonic powers, there will also be a standard leveling system, as well as varied weapons, armor, accessories, and even some NPC-driven side quests and a crafting system. But with all the stuff we know is going to be in the game, the big question is, will it actually be good? Well, there's reason to be both optimistic and pessimistic. A lot has happened in the development of Bloodstained since they finished what was, at the time, the biggest video game Kickstarter in history. The original announced release date was set for March 2017, and as you may have noticed, that didn't happen. In September 2016, the game was announced to be delayed to the first half of 2018, and then in August of 2018, it was delayed again to 2019. Many of these delays were likely unavoidable. After all, that target date of March 2017 was set before IGA realized he would be massively expanding the scope of the game with dozens of stretch goals. Still, it has been easy to get the sense that development wasn't progressing smoothly behind the scenes. At the same time the initial delay was announced, it was also announced that the project would be bringing on a new developer. That developer's name was Daiko, which until that point had been primarily a mobile game developer based in Tokyo. Now, there's nothing inherently strange or unusual about bringing in a new developer, especially for a game that needed extra help with an unexpectedly large scope. The problem is, the primary developer at the time was Inti Creates, and in 2016, Inti Creates was the face of the disappointing launch of Mighty No. 9, another high-profile Kickstarter game. The combination of Mighty No. 9's commercial failure, the shuffling of developers, and the long delay announcement raised some anxieties. Was Bloodstained, a Kickstarter-backed Castlevania successor, in the midst of suffering the same fate as Mighty No. 9, a Kickstarter-backed Mega Man successor? Honestly, we still don't know, but there is reason to be optimistic. For starters, Bloodstained Curse of the Moon is already out. The Castlevania 3-inspired prequel game was one of the stretch goals of the Kickstarter, and unlike the main game, Inti Creates actually remained on the development of that title. It released in May of 2018 and was generally received very well. Though it wasn't the full game, Curse of the Moon at least showed everyone that the Bloodstained development team knows when a game is good enough to release. But the controversy surrounding the game wasn't done yet. As development pushed back into 2019, it became necessary to cut some of the promises made in the initial Kickstarter pitch. The Nintendo Wii U and PlayStation Vita were originally supposed to receive their own versions of the game when it was announced in 2015. But in 2019, those systems are obsolete, so their versions were scrapped in favor of a Nintendo Switch version. Though Bloodstained is slated for a release this year, it won't be releasing with every stretch goal included. Similar to Shovel Knight, who, by the way, appears as a character in the game, Bloodstained will be launching with the full base game intact, with stretch goal content launching later as free DLC. At launch, the game will have several playable game modes available, including Boss Rush mode, Speedrun mode, Nightmare mode, and New Game Plus. And a second playable character, the Demon Hunter Zangetsu, will also be available as a free post-launch update. In case you didn't know, Zangetsu will be voiced by David Hayter, the legendary voice of Solid Snake.
I knew what you are. That ghastly air about you. You reek of sorcery, Shardbinder.
But there is still lots more content planned for later. That includes another, yet unannounced playable character, a classic mode with traditional linear Castlevania-style gameplay, a roguelike mode, chaos mode, boss revenge, and both cooperative and competitive multiplayer modes. Bloodstained's DLC plans naturally have also drawn a bit of controversy. There is Day 1 premium DLC in the form of a boss battle against Koji Igarashi himself, and the powerful Sword Whip weapon as a reward. Originally, these were both intended to be Kickstarter backer exclusive rewards, which required a higher funding tier to access than the main game itself. However, publisher 505 Games decided to make that content publicly available as premium DLC in order to curb potential piracy from non-backers. They're putting it on sale for $10 to reflect the additional investment backers made to access it. Naturally, backers won't be paying that extra $10 since they essentially already bought that content during the Kickstarter period. But despite a poll showing that the majority of backers, full disclosure myself included, wanted the Iga boss fight to be made available, some are still upset about more people having access to that content. Of course, all of this controversy, the hand-wringing, and worrying about the game will disappear in a hurry if the game comes out and meets its high expectations. Inversely, the cries will become louder and more insistent if the game falls short of those expectations. Luckily, we don't have to wait much longer to find out which of those will be the case. Bloodstained Ritual of the Night comes out June 18th for PC, Xbox One, and PlayStation 4, and a week later on June 25th for the Nintendo Switch. I've been Dean from Fandom, and I hope to see you there.